The mystery of the Cherokee DNA. America's darkest secret. The night was silent, but the earth beneath the Appalachian Mountains seemed alive as if it remembered. The mist hung thick over the valleys, wrapping the trees like ghosts beneath the endless sky. The land pulsed with secrets buried for centuries. They say the mountains remember everything, every whisper, every scream, every truth buried beneath the soil. And if you listen long enough, they start to speak. They speak of a people older than the colonies, older than the borders, older even than history itself. A people whose blood carries a story that should not exist. A story that challenges everything we've been told about who discovered this land. What if the DNA of an ancient nation, the Cherokee, holds proof that they are not entirely from this world as we know it? What if hidden within their blood is a map to a forgotten civilization? One that crossed oceans long before Columbus ever dreamed of sailing. What if America's oldest story is also its darkest secret? Before we open this door, take a moment. Subscribe to Real Story Tube, because what you're about to hear is myth, and it isn't legend. It's history rewritten by blood, long before the first ships appeared on the horizon. Before the idea of America existed, there were the Aniunwia, the real people. They were the Cherokee, born from fire, water, and mountain. Their villages stretched from the Carolinas to Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. They lived in harmony with the land. Their language was poetry, their stories living memories. They spoke of creation of the first animals, of the sacred balance between worlds. Outsiders, they were a tribe, but in truth, they were a nation sophisticated, structured, visionary. By the early 1800s, the Cherokee had their own alphabet, invented by Sequoyah, their own newspaper, their own laws. They were proof that civilization didn't need to be imported. It was already here, but history has sharp teeth. And one day, it's bit down. When scientists, centuries later, began to study the DNA of the Cherokee, they expected to find what they had seen in other Native American nations, the ancient genetic markers that trace back to the first migrations from Asia. But the Cherokee DNA was different. Instead of matching the known native haplogroups, it revealed something strange, something no one could explain. Bloodlines that linked to the Mediterranean, to North Africa, even to the ancient Near East. Codes that connected the Cherokee to people thousands of miles away, people they should never have met. It was impossible. And yet, the data was there, staring back through the microscope like an accusation. Who were the Cherokee truly? And what had their ancestors seen? If you're fascinated by hidden truths and buried history, subscribe now to Real Story Tube, where every story we tell pulls another secret from the shadows. As more samples were tested, the pattern held mitochondrial DNA, the kind passed down through mothers, showed unexpected European and Middle Eastern markers. Even some Cherokee elders carried ancient lineages, shared with people of the Iberian Peninsula and the Levant. The deeper scientists dug, the stranger it became. How could a people, isolated in the Appalachian Mountains for thousands of years, share DNA with civilizations across the sea? Some said it was simply intermarriage, after European contact, but others noticed these haplogroups existed in lineages predating colonization locked inside remains far older than any European settlement. That shouldn't be possible unless, of course, the Cherokee weren't just children of this land, but descendants of travelers from another world. Another time, legends began to resurface. Old Cherokee stories spoke of the Shining Ones, pale visitors, who came across the Great Water in ancient times, teaching new ways of agriculture and spirituality. Could these stories be distant echoes of real encounters, or were they metaphors? Spiritual parables misunderstood by science? No one knew for certain, but the DNA whispered the same tune as the legends. And that whisper grew louder when researchers found a genetic connection between some Cherokee families and ancient Phoenician sailors, the seafarers of the Bronze Age. These were men who mapped the Mediterranean before Rome was even born, who crossed oceans long before compasses existed. Could they have reached the shores of America and mingled with the ancestors of the Cherokee? It was a theory dismissed by mainstream historians, but the evidence refused to vanish. Then came the darker part of the story. 1838, the Trail of Tears. Under the Indian Removal Act, soldiers came, forcing the Cherokee from their homes. They were marched west through the winter barefoot, starving, dying by the thousands. The Cherokee called it Nuna Dole Tsunyi, the trail where they cried. Those who survived carried more than sorrow. They carried fragments of history, memories, songs, and bloodlines that the world would soon try to erase. By the time modern scientists began collecting DNA samples, centuries later, what they found was not just Cherokee. It was the story of every migration, every mixing, every heartbreak. A record written not in books, but in blood. If stories like these move you, stories that breathe life into forgotten history, subscribe to Real Story 2, because we uncover what others are afraid to tell. The more the researchers explored, the stranger the puzzle became. The Cherokee weren't the only ones with unexpected ancestry. Many people across the American South and East, who proudly claimed Cherokee descent, showed no native DNA at all. It was as if the memory of Cherokee blood had spread farther than the blood itself. Historians called it the Cherokee grandmother syndrome, a phenomenon where countless families claimed a distant Cherokee ancestor, but in truth, many were descendants of Europeans or Africans, whose stories had been rewritten over time. Yet even among true Cherokee lineages, the mystery persisted. Their genetic code still defied the map of history, and then came the theory that chilled everyone who studied it. What if America's earliest civilizations were not isolated at all? What if the Cherokee were descendants of an ancient contact, one deliberately hidden across the Atlantic? Archaeologists began noticing similar anomalies in Spain, in ancient ports of Tyre and Carthage, and in forgotten Phoenician ruins. They found carvings of symbols nearly identical to Cherokee glyphs. Coincidence or memory carved in stone? The Cherokee themselves spoke of a homeland beyond the Great Water, a place where the sun rose twice. It was dismissed as myth for generations. But as the DNA evidence emerged, some began to wonder if myth was simply memory, disguised as legend. Maybe the real people remembered something the world forgot. Even within Cherokee oral traditions, there are warnings about bloodlines. Elders spoke of a sacred mix of families who came from the stars, and others who came from across the waters. They said we were never just one people. We are the meeting of many fires. Perhaps that was more than poetry. Perhaps it was a coded truth, preserved in story, when the world was not ready to hear it. For centuries, their identity has been misunderstood, romanticized, erased, and borrowed by others. But the Cherokee remain not as a mystery to solve, but as a testament to endurance, a living link between ancient worlds. The truth may never be fully known. Maybe the DNA results are echoes of old migrations, long forgotten. Maybe they are the scars of centuries of invasion and survival. Or maybe, just maybe, they are proof of something greater, something that rewrites everything we think we know about human history. Because, if the Cherokee truly share blood with the old world, then the story of America didn't begin in 1492. It began thousands of years earlier, in ships lost to time, in journeys erased by empires, in hearts that carried fire across oceans. And that is America's darkest secret. The mountains still whisper it, the rivers still hum it, the wind still carries the voices of those who walked before they were the real people, not because of where they came from, but because they refused to disappear. And somewhere in their DNA, the truth still sleeps, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. Shh! If this story has opened your eyes, if you want to keep uncovering the hidden corners of our world, subscribe to Real Story 2 right now. Because here, every story is real, every secret is waiting, and every truth we tell brings light to what history tried to bury. It is a mirror held up to humanity itself, the back and forth it acts as a, and together they were a fragile people, in a spirit that was fierce and unyielding. They lost their land, built more cabins, even learned to gather for council beneath the open sky. Through every hardship, they were determined to create a future for their children to call their own. But in their hearts a secret, there was still a fire burning. The memory of the people that no longer belong to. Never stop the blood of ancestors, even if they are far away, or try to drown them. Then came the Civil War. From the 14th to the 18th century, the Union and the Confederacy fought a bloody war that never lasted, once again. And as the world reaction to this, around the world, found themselves in the awkward position between two worlds, not able to make the balance between their